Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Wang with Constellation Research, and today we get to speak on one of my favorite topics inside the post-digital future of content. What does that mean? We're focusing on content at the speed of experience. So here's a stat here. 63% of the Fortune 500 have been merged, acquired, gone bankrupt, and fallen off the list since 2000. These companies didn't go away because they weren't ready. In fact, they were in the midst of trying to transform themselves, but they hadn't adopted digital. In fact, they haven't adopted digital transformation, and they failed. Let's just be honest. They weren't able to move quickly enough. They weren't able to serve digital channels. They didn't get the right ethos. They didn't build that in their culture. And we saw what happened. But we also know that digital transformation is not enough. We've got to do more. It's not just about getting the digital channels up. It's about thinking about digital business models and digital monetization. That is the secret behind that success. And content plays an outsized role. It plays a very powerful role in our daily lives in terms of making that happen. You know, you could be B2B, you could be B2C, you could be B2B2C. But what we're seeing is whether in the future of work or whether in customer experience, this content plays a big role. We've gone from static content, it's kind of neat, to interactive content. We've gone from broadcast, where we're pushing out to everybody, to how do we actually engage with each other? And we've gone from folks that are consuming content to creating that content. That requires a very different type of content strategy. That requires a digital approach, and that requires a shift in how we look at this. Why? Everybody is both a content creator and a content consumer. Think about that. That means we actually have to change the approach that we take when we think about this digital content. Now, content creators don't have it easy. In fact, they face massive challenges. Think about the content lifecycle. We start by creating awesome content, then we start managing how we get that content out there, and then we've got to figure out how to secure that content, and then we start sharing that content. We start collaborating with each other. We distribute it out there, and then sometimes we archive, and then sometimes we remove the content. But you know what? It's not getting easier with all the content that we're creating. In fact, it's actually getting harder and harder. We are like in the situation where we've got to get out of content management and start thinking about content orchestration. Why? There's upstream and downstream processes in all this content, how we create it. And the more content we create, the harder it is to manage. We've got to figure out how to build into our design plans a build once, deliver everywhere kind of approach. So from content assembly to our content pipelines to our content supply chains, content management has to change, and it's got to become more like content orchestration if we're going to survive. In fact, we're drowning in content. There's just so much content out there, and information overload is killing us. And it's not just the content we talked about. It's how do we get it out there? How can we use it just once? Why is it sitting in so many different silos? Help, right? Why is it so hard to work on a document and collaborate? Why is it so hard to be able to put this content in my website, on my mobile device, in all the different channels, in augmented reality? Why can't I just use the same content once? And it's so important. But more importantly, how do we make sure that content is being seen, it's being used, it's being applied? Well, here's the thing. If you are irrelevant, you will be ignored. What's happening? Well, because of that content overload, not just in the management, but also in the consumption, every company will be competing for time and attention via contextual relevancy. That content has to be relevant for people to be engaged, right? And that comes through tagging, that comes through understanding how the content's going to be used, that comes from the engagement of the tag, and that brings it all together. So what's really happening? Well, as we're using content and we're thinking about content strategy, we're building in dynamic feedback loops. And these dynamic feedback loops give us what we call signal intelligence. We want to understand what's being used. We understand how to bring that information back. And what we're doing is we're building intent detection into that content so that when the content is being used, how it's being used, where it's being used, what's being tagged, all that metadata is being put together and used to help us become more intelligent, bring us not just the analytics, but all the other insights that's important. In fact, what we're doing is we're trying to improve what we call decision velocity. And what is decision velocity? Well, think about it this way. Humans make one decision per second. Well, pretty good. It takes us 6 to 8 weeks to get out of management committee if we're lucky. And even then, we might not even have a decision. But machines make 1,000 decisions per second. And what we're trying to do is improve decision velocity, that asymmetry between what a machine can make and what we can make. That's the decision velocity we have to actually overcome. And that's where automation and AI are going to play a big role. Now, part of it is also how do we deliver what we call ambient experiences, things that just naturally happen in the background. Well, that requires three things with your content. The first one is the ability to assign context. The second one is to give people choices throughout the journey. And the third one is to give you anticipatory analytics. So let's talk about each one of these in detail. Context on that content is really about things like time, location, what part of the business process it was in, what's the weather like, what was someone's sentiment, how did they feel, what was going on, who were they around, who were they with, right? And all that comes together. Now, that context then comes into play as we think about the orchestration of that content. Orchestration content is basically like a choose your own adventure book. How many remember those books? Those are great. You know, at the bottom of each page, you had choices. So you read the story, start on page one, choices pop up. So you decide, hey, I'm going to go see the king. Okay, page 72. If you want to go see someone else and see the scarecrow, fine. That's going to be page 35. And suddenly you're moving in and out of all those pages. And suddenly the end. 18 to 25 possible endings. Pretty crazy, right? And this is all powered by choices. And in the digital world, every choice you make is a demand signal. Every choice you make has attribution. We have the journey. We have the context. We have the persona. We have the role. And that actually allows us to take us to the next step, which is anticipatory analytics. Anticipatory analytics work like this. This intention-driven design around anticipatory analytics is basically skating to where the puck will be. Now, what do I mean? Well, there used to be a famous hockey player named Wayne Gretzky. He's still alive, but he's not playing in the NHL, in the National Hockey League. And what happened was someone asked his father, why is Wayne such an awesome hockey player? And they said, look, he skates to where the puck will be. Well, how do you know where the puck is going to be? Well, that takes some anticipatory analytics. You have to guess using an experience. He knew whether he should go left, lean in right, attack the goalie from far back or come in closer. He knew that. And that's really that experience and knowledge over time that we get from understanding machine learning, understanding patterns, looking at that analysis and making that first guess. In fact, when we think about these new types of experiences, and they're relevant experiences, we take an analytical mindset, we take automation, and we take AI and bring it all together. That's how we power these relevant experiences. And that's going to play a big role going forward. Why? Well, because content orchestration requires us to use these tools. Now, what do I mean by AI tools for content orchestration? Well, a couple. Let me give you three examples. We're looking for tool sets and capabilities and technologies that support open integration with AI tools. And this is AWS recognition is a great one. Think about that. You can automatically index and tag images in Media Manager. That's a pretty powerful capability. We can also use things for integrating content using things like IBM Watson for semantic analysis, getting your natural language processing, and that adds metadata content automatically. And of course, a lot of folks are using Adobe Analytics. We're using Segment or Google Analytics, and that helps us with content performance management. So that's really what that part is. Then what are we talking about? Digital first? Well, how do we get to this digital first era? Well, content velocity plays a big role. How quickly can we produce content and get it out there? Second, what do we do with personalization? And how do we actually enable the democratization of content creation? Can we make it easier for folks to build? Can we actually improve this mass personalization at scale? And more importantly, can we get that content out quickly and distributed? Now, the last part that I want to spend some time talking about is really how atomic content is so important. What is the basic building block? What is the base building block? These are raw building blocks for any digital experience, components that can be put together. And the whole point is we can assemble them, we can bring them together, we can reuse them, we can repurpose them, we can recombine them for each context and text touch point. It gets us to the ability to simplify how content is being used, and it helps us with the content orchestration. This is no longer content management. This is our ability to orchestrate content at scale. And what do we also need to do? Well, we need to be able to have open, extensible platforms. This is what gives us resiliency. And this comes from a whole bunch of things. When we bring different platforms and vendors together, we've got to have a flexible approach to do this. This is through APIs. This is through integration frameworks. This is through having the right software development kits or SDKs. that helps us with the ability to bring things from all over the place. It's not going to be one giant system, monolithic. You're going to still pull content from everywhere. In fact, a lot of your content is going to sit outside of your nice four walls. In fact, we're going to pull content from all sources when we create dynamic content models. So what else do we need to do? Well, we also need to make sure that for the content creators, we give them programmable tools that allow them to scale. These tools have to be event-driven workflows. We're using webhooks. We're using scripted and automated approaches like CLI. This is how we get there, and this is how we become successful. And once we have that, we can focus on content analytics. Well, what do I mean by content analytics? We want to know how the content's performing. How's it doing? What content's being viewed more? Why? Right? And that understanding and that knowledge powers our ability to deliver on machine learning and some other areas. And then once we have that, we have the ability to deliver on dynamic content at scale. This is not going to be all those bad sets of rules and different content for every scenario. We're going to improve our ability to reuse content, repurpose it, and get into orchestration of that content. So what are we doing? Well, the main thing here is really thinking about where content can be useful, right? And we want platforms that are great for content creators or builders. That is a very, very important thing. And content creators want speed, they want flexibility, they want to be able to deliver on this in a very rapid piece. This is the content velocity. The second piece, though, is we want flexible platforms. Content creators and content need the ability to have extensibility, the ability to scale that content over time. And then, of course, we want to apply what we talked about, automation, analytics, and AI, so we can actually build digital experiences at scale, right? And that's really about having the reliability of that infrastructure, make sure that you're going to be successful. This is so important. Okay, so recap. Content is king, queen. Content is royalty. Think about that. And we are inside this post-digital future of content. And what we're trying to deliver is content at the speed of experience. It doesn't matter who you are, what industry, if you're B2B, B2C, or B2B2C, this future of work, this future of customer experience is happening right now. And that shift from static to interactive, broadcast engagement, consumer to creator means you need to have the tools that move you from content management to content orchestration at the scale of digital experiences. Thank you very much.